These days, every job is a technology job. Whether you're a programmer, a marketer, or even just someone who sits down in front of a computer every day, you have a stake in the tapestry of the technology industry. Welcome to Wits and Wisdom, a podcast sharing insights, innovations, and inspiration from the award-winning Women in Tech Summit. Join host Gloria Bell, founder of the Women in Tech Summit, multi-hyphenate entrepreneur, and advocate for equity and equality in tech as she sits down with extraordinary guests from the WITS community. Listen in as they discuss wisdom from their career journeys, pro tips from their areas of expertise, and sneak previews of the biggest upcoming tech trends. This is Wits and Wisdom, a podcast from the Women in Tech Summit and Inspiring Tech Foundation.
Hello, and welcome to Wits and Wisdom, a podcast sharing insights, innovation, and inspiration from the award-winning Women in Tech Summit. I'm your host, Gloria Bell, founder of WITS and the Inspiring Tech Foundation. Today, we have the pleasure of sitting down with Grace Francisco. Grace has a long and impressive resume that includes positions at Microsoft, Cisco, Atlassian, and currently she is the CMO and head of developer relations of Pangea, the first security platform as a service. So welcome to Wits and Wisdom.
Well, thank you for having me.
You are a subject matter expert on cybersecurity, and so I would love to talk a little bit in that area. The talk you gave this morning at WITS, you spoke specifically about why developers can and should be the first line of defense in securing data. But you started us all out with a dance, which I absolutely loved because it got us all up and moving. And I just have to know the story. What inspired that?
The dance?
Yes.
Sometimes I have these moments of creativity, and I remember thinking about what is going to make my talk engaging, because security can be dry. Security can be scary. I wanted something that would help people feel motivated to come and to be engaged. And I knew it was going to be first thing in the morning, and some people are going to be kind of half awake because they just really barely got up. And I thought also, physical movement associated with new ideas and concepts actually help drive home the learning. And I had just recently been talking to my husband about us going and learning some like salsa dance moves and going to like a fun like dance school where you learn new dance moves every week. And so the timing of that and the timing of like putting together this talk, I just had this aha moment of, wait a minute, we're talking about shift left of left. I could turn that into a dance. I'm going to make it into a dance. My husband thought I was completely off my rocker, and he just kind of had this look of, oh, no, are you sure you want to do that? And I said, absolutely. I can't wait.
You can tell him he was wrong, that everyone loved it, and they were all very engaged. So I think most people know cybersecurity threats exist. We hear about it all the time. And I don't know that most people really can grasp the scale. It's this thing that's just out there. They know it's there, but does it really affect me? Kind of attitude that most people have. So can you give everyone just a little bit of a glimpse? Because I know it's a big topic that we could talk about forever, but maybe a little glimpse of what the costs of these breaches are. Maybe financially or personally, give them something they can grasp to really understand.
Oh, goodness. There's just so much data about the cost of these breaches and cybersecurity threats. And I could give you this massive number, but I think the sad reality is we've gotten used to hearing these numbers as if it's just normal, as if we should just accept it as normal. But a big part of the problem is we're not doing enough to help developers ensure that they are developing secure and compliant code from the beginning. And we can't expect and wait for every single developer to become a security specialist or a security expert. They should do training, absolutely, but that takes time. And we are at a point in time where the kinds of threats that we have now are actual threats to our national infrastructure security. The things that have happened just in 2021 alone, Colonial Pipeline, Log4j, and SolarWinds, 3 massively big cybersecurity attacks. That's going to get worse. In fact, there are things happening every day that we're not hearing about in the news. We have to enable and empower developers to build that secure code through APIs, through platforms that can help them build that application securely now and not wait. And that inherently is the thing that has been a big gap in the market today, and that we need to help out with to ensure that they can do that without having to go to school for months in order to build secure code from the ground up. There are solutions like Auth0 and Pangea that can help with things like that, and it's super important to drive that education home, but also just continually learning. So hopefully most engineering groups are practicing Agile, and after a sprint, you should be practicing a retro. And in every retro, you should be learning through the process of what's going well, what's not going well when you're building that application. And that should include, is this code secure? We should be always asking ourselves at the beginning of design and also at the end of every sprint, is this secure? Have we done everything possible to ensure that this is secure for the safety of our end users, for the safety of our business? So sprint is a range of time in which you've defined. It could be 2 weeks, it could be 4 weeks, it could be 3 months. A lot of sprints these days are very short sprints so that you can get out new features quickly. And after that sprint is done, your team should be doing what's called a retrospective.
From everything you're telling me, it really seems like the issues of vulnerability, especially vulnerability to cybercrime, are massively under-addressed, especially on the front end when we're developing code. Why do you think that is? Like, is there a gap within the industry that we need to be thinking more about?
My answer to that is going to have a couple of different components. One is everyone under the sun now has a storefront, right? Everyone wants to have some kind of online presence. Even brick and mortar companies now have some sort of online presence, often having something like a registration form so that they know who's there, who their partners are, customers are, people who are interested in them. And that simple thing of a form and putting any data, that data they're collecting is what falls under the bucket of what we call PII, personally identifiable information. And we should treat that like the crown jewels of France or the crown jewels of Britain, because that PII can be used to create financial accounts, to take someone's mobile number and transfer it over to someone who is trying to do something malicious. And so we have to be really cognizant about that. And I don't think that most average everyday web developers taught those basic fundamentals. And so we need to get a lot more education out about that, number one. Number two is that the practice of building these forms probably could be done in a lot more of a secure and consistent way. So I think there's definitely an opportunity there for vendors to think about having frameworks that are easily consumable by most web developers so that when they are collecting PII, they're doing it in the safest and the most secure way possible, and ensuring that only the people that are really required have access to that PII. Because the sad matter is, in very large companies especially, there may be bad actors that may be using that content for not the best reasons. And so you want to protect that data even within your company boundaries and ensure only the right people have access.
Right.
And for that, you need to be tracking who has access to that data, ensuring that data is in a vault that is very secure, that cannot be tapped into without the right authorization and access. And so all of those things are security features that most web developers don't necessarily know how to build, because they're not taught things like tamper-proofing. What does tamper-proofing mean? How do you make sure that the data is securely stored? How do you make sure that only authorized users have access to that? And then simple flaws that a lot of developers don't think about is sometimes people are tired when they are filling out these forms, and they might inadvertently put in a very, very sensitive piece of PII, like their social security number or their phone number, in the wrong field. And that process sometimes logs it into a clear text log that anybody has access to. suddenly they have access to your password and they can put two and two together and then go and be you in that account. And if it's a financial account, that could be disastrous. And Secure Code Warriors research report this year revealed that because of the time pressure that most developers operate in, I think it was something like 67% of them admitted that they knowingly are actually submitting code that has security flaws in it, knowingly. And those were the honest ones. I think the reality is that 67% is probably a lot higher. So there's a lot of opportunity there in terms of education and then using the right APIs and tooling to bridge that gap. Because again, web developers probably aren't going to have the time and convenience of learning to become cryptography or security experts and understanding how to do that on their own. And so you need to give them the right tooling to do that. And Pangea is one of these solutions that offers that. In fact, Pangea is the only one that offers it all in one single platform that any developer can take advantage of. And Secure Code Warrior is a company that does a lot of training for developers in terms of security practices. They're a great company. In fact, they've gone so far as to actually build integrations with GitHub and I think GitLab as well, so that when you push your code and you do a PR request, there's an integration that checks if your code has any potential security holes in it. And it will then trigger something that will indicate a need for training to that developer. So that's one way of like slowly integrating the training as a developer is posting and publishing their code to the GitHub repo. Now, the thing is, we need to be thinking about accelerating that level of secure applications and compliant applications. When I say compliant, I'm thinking about things like GDPR, Global Data Privacy Regulation, which is under EU and can cost a company millions of dollars in penalties if they're not following that policy. We're under intense pressure to innovate and publish all the time. And we can't wait for the government to get involved at this point. The level of threat where our infrastructure is at risk, where we could literally be in the middle of winter and 40% of our population could be impacted in the middle of winter not having access to heating or electricity because our gas pipelines are using old, dilapidated systems that are not regulated by the same cybersecurity standards as our electrical counterparts, right? They are under those standards, but their gas counterparts aren't, and they both actually have to work together in order to keep our energy running, our systems running. And that was proven in the Austin scenario where we had Snowmageddon in 2021 in February. They did a rolling outage of electricity on purpose, right? Because the threshold of use they couldn't sustain. But what they didn't plan for and didn't think about is that the gas pipeline facilities also depend on electricity to run. They shut them down, which is what inherently caused millions of people to not have heat. And then a cascading effect of that was their pipes burst. It was that cold. And this was for weeks, and thousands of people actually died. And this was not a cybersecurity attack, but it could be. It could be because the gas pipeline vendors, their systems are so prone for attack right now, and that will take our infrastructure down. That has a lot of downstream effects.
So clearly there's a need, and we've talked about this before, and I think you even mentioned it a little bit in your talk, is that women in particular are uniquely suited to work in cybersecurity. So what superpower is it that women specifically have in terms of addressing cybersecurity concerns? And I know there's a shortage in cybersecurity of qualified workforce. And how can women help fill it? What opportunities are there?
I'll answer that in reverse. The gap in cybersecurity in terms of the workforce is something on the order of 1.5 to 2 million people. 1.5 to 2 million roles being unfulfilled, and such an urgent need of people skilled with cybersecurity skills, right? That's number one. Women's superpowers. We are just much more acutely attuned to security, both in the present physical world as well as the online virtual world. And the example of that is, especially for those of us who grew up in big cities, to just by autopilot know I'm out at night, it's dark, I'm by myself, to take out your car key, put it in your hand, and make a fist. And the same goes with our online presence. Many of us put restrictions on who can access our personal social profiles, because something on the order of 78% of women are targeted by cyber attacks, right? And it's similar to what we experience in the physical world. And you can look at that and say, oh my God, being a woman is so hard and life is tough. And I would say, no, flip that around and look at that as the fact that you have laser vision. It's a superpower. You are looking at the world through a different lens. It actually makes you uniquely positioned to be really great at security. Whether you decide to become a cybersecurity specialist or not, if you are developing code, you could be that person who is the voice of change, of that cultural shift in your application development department to drive home the need to keep that top of mind, to be that person that asks the right questions with every design discussion, with every retrospective that you do. That is your superpower. Lean into it, embrace it, wear the cape if you want, or not, but you have a superpower that you're uniquely positioned to lean into and use. And we need you, because every day these threats are growing worse and worse. And literally our infrastructure, our livelihoods, our health is at risk. So we need everyone to really lean into that opportunity.
Oh, I think we should all wear the capes. So how can our listeners get in touch with you?
The good news, according to my kids, is that you can Google me pretty easily and find my LinkedIn. I've built up enough of a reputation over time that you can easily find me if you Google my name. And I am on LinkedIn, and I'm also on Twitter, so that you can find me in both those social platforms. And I'm always eager to hear what people are doing to drive diversity forward in a constructive way, and how they're helping with, driving security left of left, and making sure that we are, as developers, becoming more responsible in the way that we practice our coding, and more responsible as vendors in general, and really protecting our end user consumers, our end user businesses.
Is there anything that you've got coming up that you want to give a shout out to? Any speaking engagements, any writing, anything?
Big shout out to Securathon, which you will find on devpost.com. This is our online hackathon, which will help you understand as a developer how to use Pangea's APIs to make your applications more secure.
Awesome. Wonderful. Anything that we didn't cover that you want to make sure our listeners know about?
Just don't forget about your superpowers. Lean into the opportunity, go lead, go forward, and help change the culture of application development to be more secure.
Wonderful. Grace, thank you so much. It has been so wonderful having you as a speaker here at WITS Northeast and having this chance to chat with you. I love getting to do live podcasts because I actually get to sit with you. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity. And remember, shift left of left and keep dancing.
Absolutely. So thank you so much to all of our listeners for joining us on Wits and Wisdom. We hope to see you at one of our upcoming summits. And thank you for joining us on Wits and Wisdom. And we will see you next time.
Ready to learn more about the Women in Tech Summit? Visit our website at womenintechsummit.net. That's womenintechsummit.net to view our most up-to-date event schedules, calls for speakers, and sponsorship opportunities. If you enjoyed this episode, bookmark the show, give us a follow, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps us educate, inspire, and connect with even more movers and shakers within and beyond the technology industry. Thanks for listening, and see you here again soon on Wits and Wisdom, a podcast from the Women in Tech Summit and the Inspiring Tech Foundation.